Welcome to open session of the May 18th, 2021 Oroville City Council meeting, where we are reconvening from closed session, where direction was given but no action was taken. I am calling this meeting to order. Stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Moving on to presentations and proclamations. Item number 1 is Butte County Department of Employment Services and Social Services and Homeless Response presentation.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, and I'm sorry, Shelby, would it be possible if we could move the proclamation for the St. Thomas 8th Grader Crusaders up to the front of the agenda? Last time they sat through about a 40-minute presentation on the mental health state of our county, and I know they really enjoyed it and they want to sit through another one, but if we could just move forward to this, that would be great. And then
Absolutely.
if they choose to stay, I know Shelby, she's a dynamic speaker. You will enjoy the presentation.
15 minutes, right? Do we have someone here to, so moving on, item number 2, St. Thomas 8th Grade Crusaders Proclamation. And the city council would like to thank the 8th graders at St. Thomas for redoing our flower beds out front. Is there someone here to accept this? I think I'm just going to stay back a little bit instead of wearing that, or for me to read with it on, okay? I'm Chuck Reynolds, I'm your mayor. What's your name? Diana. Is this, yeah, here we go. Diana. Okay, and Chris? Yeah.
And I'm Mrs. Knott, their teacher.
Okay, great. All right, welcome. So, first of all, I personally would like to thank you and your classmates for what you did out there. It's absolutely beautiful. And we're hoping that you'll come back and do the other side. So we were really impressed, and thank you for being so involved in your community. It's really important, because I'll tell you what, if you're not getting involved with how you're going to live, somebody's going to tell you how to live. So, good job. This is a proclamation recognizing St. Thomas the Apostle Parish School and students for achieving their goals in the 2020 and 2021 7th and 8th grade Crusade Community Project. Whereas St. Thomas the Apostle School was established in 1955 as an educational ministry of St. Thomas the Apostle Parish family, serving the parish community, nearby Catholic parishes, and others who accept their values and principles. Whereas the philosophy of St. Thomas the Apostle School recognizes parents as primary educators of their children, creating an educational partnership between parents, students, and teachers. And whereas St. Thomas the Apostle School's commitment to the community's youth is to provide a good education, instill values of responsibility and personal growth, and development of their students through giving back. And whereas understanding the importance of building community and growing through service as a core value of learning, St. Thomas the Apostle School challenged their 7th and 8th graders to participate in the Crusade Community Project and to pick a project annually in an effort to beautify the community. And whereas the students of St. Thomas the Apostle School set an amazing standard for the challenge of the crusade by picking a site and beautifying the space with kindness and love. Now, therefore, I, Chuck Reynolds, Mayor of the City of Oroville, in concurrence with the Oroville City Council, do hereby recognize St. Thomas the Apostle School and the 7th and 8th grade students for their outstanding performance in meeting the challenge of the crusade, and urge all citizens to join with me in this sincere expression of encouragement for all students to embrace the importance and overall joy of giving back. Thank you. Great. Can we get somebody get a picture for the? Sure.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could now, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Shelby Boston. She is the Director of the Department of Employment and Social Services. I've always taken it for granted that everybody knew who Shelby was. I know Shelby. I've worked with Shelby for many years just because of our interaction, because our disciplines have crossed paths. But I want to introduce her not only as the director, but somebody who I consider a friend and also has been a very good friend and advocate to our community. So I appreciate all the work Shelby does on our behalf. Shelby is here tonight to update us on the social services and the homeless response that we have going on in the area to help us as a city to better coordinate with the county and the county resources. So we're trying to forge that relationship and build a stronger one so that we can provide a more unified delivery of service.
Not at all.
Take it off.
Promise you I'm vaccinated. So thank you, and thank you for those kind words, Bill. I feel the same, and I'm really honored to be here today to share with you what we're doing on the county level in regards to our response to homelessness. And I promise I will be brief. I actually timed myself a couple times, so I'm at 15, a little shy of 15 minutes. So I'm going to go over a little bit of history. I'm going to provide an overview of the variety of programs that my department provides in relation to homelessness and homeless services. I'm going to give a little update on our home branch, which you may or may not have heard of. That was a newest part of my department. And then I'm going to give a brief overview of DES's relationship with the continuum of care. Let's see. Where am I pointing to make it work? It did. There we go. Okay. So DES and the county's role is a little different. We are responsible for providing direct client services and access to benefits. And so we are not out in the field necessarily like some of the advocacy groups. We are basically the conduit to connect clients to services. And we work in coordination with our local nonprofits like the Oroville Rescue Mission, the Jesus Center, the other nonprofits that serve the population of homeless or those individuals who are at risk of homelessness. We also coordinate and partner with our local cities and towns and try to do our best to coordinate efforts in how we are responding to the homeless situation we have in Butte County. For several years, we have been working as a community to address and plan for a response to homelessness. And starting all the way back in April of 2016, there was when the first local homeless symposium was coordinated. And I don't know if any of you were able to participate in that back in 2016. My predecessor and Scott Kennelly's predecessor both were part of that and helping to coordinate that symposium. And basically what it did is pull together all of those interested parties, both nonprofits, local government, and there was discussion around what is the research saying around homelessness. And it really kind of kicked off how we were going to address homelessness in the county of Butte. In 2017, the state pushed out one of the first housing packages that showed us at the county that we really needed to be prepared for what was coming down the pipe. And at that point, the county created a homeless and housing task force. And it was staff level, and we started to coordinate between development services, my department, behavioral health, public health, and really come together in a unified way to make sure we were communicating with each other what the goals are from the county's perspective and how we were going to respond and address homelessness. In 2018, September of 2018, the county declared a homeless crisis declaration. And then unfortunately, we all know what happened soon after that, campfire. And between the campfire and the North Complex, just in our county alone, we've lost over 20,000 housing units. So our stock has been incredibly impacted by these natural disasters. Then as we've seen, the last 2 fiscal years, we've seen a tremendous amount of money coming into the counties to address homelessness. And so we realized that the county needed to be prepared and have the infrastructure in place to accept those funds, get them out into the community, and do everything we could to ensure that we weren't passing up any dollars. So around that same time is when we went to the board and the Board of Supervisors and requested that a new branch be developed within my department. So this slide is just because there's been a lot of confusion around an emergency declaration and what that means versus a crisis proclamation. And so I put this in just to show the steps and to help differentiate between an emergency declaration and a crisis proclamation. I don't know if you have any questions about the difference, if this council has struggled with that or not. Some other jurisdictions have had some questions. What this does, and I believe you have an electronic copy of my presentation, it just lines out the difference. An emergency declaration is what you do when we have a true emergency like a fire or a flood, and that's when we have to declare locally, and then it goes up to the state and then ultimately to the federal level if it reaches the correct financial thresholds. And that's very different than a crisis declaration of, like, in our situation, a housing crisis or a homeless crisis. And I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have around that, but that's the reasoning behind that kind of odd slide in the midst of this deck. So the next part I'm going to go over is just briefly give you a high-level overview of the specific homeless and housing programs that my department provides. So we have a variety, and it's continuing to grow. It seems like every year we apply for every grant and opportunity that we can that seems to make sense for our communities. And we have had really great positive outcomes from the variety of services that we're providing. So our biggest program that we provide, which we have now for going on 5 years, is our housing support program, which is specifically for CalWORKs eligible families. So they must have a child in their home to be eligible and meet all of the other income requirements. Our HSP program is in 1920 fiscal year, we served over 700 families for a total of $2.2 million. It's a very large program. And what HSP can do is pay for a first and last month rent, deposits, help with getting credit repair, cleanup, doing case management, helping to work with landlords to ensure that they understand what we can do, that we're going to help with that rent for a certain amount of time. And we found that a lot of landlords are really excited about the HSP program because they know that they're going to get paid, and they know that the county is in there regularly working with that family. So if they run into issues with a renter, they know they've got some support behind them. Our next program is our our homeless assistance program, also CalWorks eligible, much smaller scale. It's targeted for about 16 days of homeless assistance, so putting a family into a hotel or motel. It's really more crisis driven, and we can help them with some financial assistance as well. In 1920, we served just shy of 300 individuals in that program and just shy of $350,000. And our next program is HDAP, our Housing and Disability Advocacy Program. This is a newer program. When we initially developed the grant response, we were focused on disabled veterans. And the good news is we realized rather quickly that there were a lot of other veteran programs that were meeting the need. And so we went back and we broadened out our scope. And so this program works with individuals who we believe would qualify for SSI, and we help them through that process of applying, oftentimes the appeal process, because it can take well over a year to get granted SSI. And then in the interim, we're able to help get that individual into suitable housing and get them some necessary supports for what they may need while they're awaiting that SSI determination. In last fiscal year, the HDAP program served about 145 individuals, and it's a smaller program, just shy of $200,000. Probably my favorite is the Home Safe program. This one is a new program. We only have had it now our second year, and it's focused on our elder population. And what we have realized with the Home Safe program is that we have sometimes elders who, for whatever reason, they have fallen into financial problems. They're on limited income, and we're finding them losing their homes or being evicted. For a variety of reasons. Sometimes they may have some hoarding behavior. They may be starting to struggle with some dementia. And this program is specifically focused on helping those individuals stay housed. And we can bring in, say it's a hoarding situation, we actually have funding in that grant to be able to bring in deep cleaning, organizational skills, so that we don't have them get evicted for that sort of challenging behavior. Again, small program. We only served 33 individuals in our first year, and a $58,000 program, but has had a tremendous impact and a positive one for that population in our community. Our Bringing Families Home, this is the very first year were awarded this grant, and this Bringing Families Home is a program specifically focused on children and families involved with child welfare. So instead of removing a child from the home and placing them into foster care just because a family has found themselves homeless, we now have some funding to be able to assist them in maintaining their housing. The last thing we ever want to do is put a child into foster care because their parents have lost their home. And so we now have some finances to be able to assist them there. And then we have, of course, Project Room Key, which you may be familiar with. This was put in place because of COVID. So my department has been...
Excuse me, Shelby.
Yeah.
Councilmember Goodson had a question.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I do have a question in regards to your HSAPS program, specifically for the elderly. So I was wondering if there is a legal / assistance with banking institutions in this particular category that would help perhaps with reverse mortgages, that type of thing. How far does that assistance go?
Yeah, so we do some financial counseling and assistance, but not as deeply as we'd want to. We'd want to partner with someone there that we can connect them with resources. But my staff are definitely not experts on the financing around reverse mortgaging. So we would help to connect them.
Okay, great, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
This Project Room Key and some of the other ones, is there any follow-up with them, or is it just they give them a room and you got a place and that's it?
For Project Room Key, we actually have contracts with Oroville Rescue Mission, the Jesus Center, and Torres Shelter, now True North, and they provide the case management. That's for Project Room Key. And so they'll help those individuals to transition out of Project Room Key, because Project Room Key is just a hotel while you're quarantining or you have a medical condition that has put you in that high-risk category. And as of today, we have 61 individuals in Project Room Key. We're seeing that steadily decline. And that's really due in part to the good work that our subcontractors are doing in relationship to those individuals finding permanent, suitable housing. We've actually had 238 individuals who have left Project Room Key for transitional or permanent housing in the last year since the program was implemented. The other programs, there's absolutely ongoing case management. It's not a one-time and done.
Because in being, interacting with the community, I'm aware that some of the unhoused that are getting these rooms are selling the rooms. They're not staying in them.
So that's the first I've heard of that. And I'm happy to, I'd love to get some more information from you on that.
All right, I was just wondering who did the follow-up.
Yeah, definitely with my team.
Okay, great.
And then just one more stat on Project Room Key. We've had 511 individuals we've served since the beginning of the program a year ago, a little over a year ago. We do expect,
Councilmember Goodson wishes to speak again.
yes,
To Project Room Key, I have to go back to that because I do live in the community and I am aware of challenged individuals that have been provided with this service. I also know that there is a very heavy taking advantage of this system. And so my question is, there's only so many available motels and rooms. What happens when a person is 86th out of each one because of disruptive behavior, because of drug and substance use?
great
And I
question.
need to, and the other thing would like to know is, what does that follow-up / case management look like? Because I believe that oftentimes there's just not enough of that checking in on a person. Because I think if there was, there would be substantial mitigation of that type of behavior.
So for Project Room Key, we are reliant upon our contractors for their case management. I do want to share one point of clarification. When a client departs Project Room Key, so they transition out of the hotel room and they go to either, sometimes they choose to go to the street, sometimes they accept the resources that are provided to them. It is dependent upon what resource they're provided, whether they'll have intensive case management or they'll be on their own. But while they're in Project Room Key, the contracts that we have in place require that there is ongoing case management, meaning they're checking in with that person on a regular basis. There's someone is laying eyes on them daily because they're getting food delivered. Not to say we haven't had issues, because we're dealing with a population who some of them have pretty significant mental health challenges. They have some challenging behaviors, not to mention some struggle with drug addiction. And sometimes it is difficult to manage those sorts of behaviors when the person you're dealing with is not receptive. And so in those situations, then we have had to have them vacate the hotel room, and then we offer them an alternative. And so that may mean going back to the homeless shelter. It may mean that they're isolated in a different situation, like one of the homeless shelters had space separate, like a big tent. So they're covered, they're in a better than being on the street, but they're not in a hotel room. So we've had to take those case by case. And if someone gets ill, then they go back to the hospital. So I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's a challenging population. And I'm very proud of the work that has been done. Staff have been very dedicated in serving this population during this pandemic.
Thank you. No, I'm done.
Is there any activities that are provided for people that are in these situations? So, because there's a lot of free time. Any classes or anything that's provided that they can attend or participate in, or activities that would keep them occupied?
Sure. So Project Room Key, no, because they're supposed to be isolating and quarantining. So Project Room Key is very specific what the purpose is. It's related strictly to the pandemic. In other programs, when folks are, if they're CalWorks, they have a case plan. And so they have to meet the criteria in the case plan. So if we're paying for them through HSP, for example, there's an expectation that they're meeting all of the requirements of their individualized case plan. So are they job searching? Are they finishing up their GET? Are they attending some employment workshops? Those kind of things. Those are normal behaviors and expectations we would have of a client in those programs. Project Room Key is a bit of its own animal, and it's not something that we typically would have in place if not for the pandemic. And it won't be in place forever.
Because I just being observant of my community, we've seen a big difference here when that program started. Of a lot of people that weren't here before and gathering in certain areas. That's why I was wondering if is there anything offered?
That's interesting. Again, haven't heard that before. And they're vetted when they come into Project Room Key to make sure that they meet criteria. They have to meet the eligibility criteria for Project Room Key. So it's for high-risk individuals, those who are over the age of 65 and have pre-existing medical conditions. They've exited from the hospital. We do a lot of referral directly from the hospitals to public health and public health to my department. That's how people get into Project Room Key. It's not just show up and you get in. We've had a waiting list for Project Room Key almost since the beginning because we had more demand of eligible individuals than we had space available throughout the county. A very small number of Project Room Key have been in Oroville, housed in Oroville through the entire program. The majority have been in North County because we have more hotels that were willing to accept clients there.
So, just one more question for me. The individuals that are housed in these hotels, are they from the area or are they coming from wherever?
No, they're Butte County residents, Butte County, with the exception I know of one that was hospitalized and they were unable to quarantine at home. So they were housed, they had a home to go to, and they were from Yuba County, but Yuba County didn't have the program and the hospital determined they needed to be quarantined. And so that's the one exception I'm aware of.
I'm sorry, you led me into one more question.
It's okay.
What in your program determines them to be a Butte County resident?
So that's part of the vetting process. Most of the individuals who we're serving have been already on some sort of assistance. So we're able to determine if someone already has an open case for Medi-Cal or they have an open case for general assistance, and they have to be able to prove that they've been in the county.
Okay. In the county or?
In the
just
county.
Okay.
We serve the whole county.
Okay. I know that in speaking to law enforcement, a lot of the people that they deal with are not from here. So.
Yeah, I think there's always a transient population that move around within the county. We saw that after all of our disasters. There was a group of individuals who traveled following disasters throughout the state and other states. And so we've done a lot around our disaster response and how we shelter individuals now moving forward in disasters. So instead of come one, come all approach, we have a vetting process for even coming into emergency shelters in our county now.
Great. We're growing.
We're trying to be proactive in how we're addressing and eliminating the opportunity for folks who are just opportunistic.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith had a question for you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good to meet you, Shelby. Appreciate you coming here tonight.
Of course.
Those questions got my brain going, so because our service providers really kind of control who receives Project Room Key opportunities and who don't. And so, transient, if you're living here, I would imagine that automatically kind of quantifies you being a part of Butte County. But that's not really where I was going. You just kind of veered me off. And this kind of goes back, I've had some time on the COC, and a couple of years ago when I first got involved with that, I had an interesting engagement with the chair. At that time, I wanted the meetings to be live streamed. And we were told, I had asked Mr. Legrone to accompany myself. And so we approached the chair of the board, and we were told that that wasn't allowed because the COC is a nothing, quote unquote, which I thought was an interesting response. So just yesterday in the COC, there was a rather lengthy presentation quantifying the history of the COC, how it's evolved over time, who's on first, what's on second, which is a very interesting discourse, which got into, they had just recently done a survey trying to quantify, how many of our current transient population are actually originally from Butte County. I think the number was 40%. According to that.
Only for Chico. It was
For
Greater Chico.
Absolutely, for Chico. Because the pit count, we passed over that this year, as you're well aware, because of COVID.
Correct.
So, but anyway, this is an interesting conversation. But where I'm going with this is to kind of get a 30,000-foot understanding of all of the intricacies, because these are all funding sources, not necessarily departments.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then your department controls those funding sources or vets them out, and part of that goes through the COC, the nothing.
None of these are run through COC. These are all these programs I just went through are all specific to DES.
Okay.
I'm not going to go over COC's funding.
Okay. According to the CDSS, the CalWorks Housing Support Program can be worked through the COC.
Right. We don't do that.
But we don't do that. Okay. Very good. It's just so it looks to me like the majority of these funding sources, as I look at COC's funding sources and these funding sources, they are different.
Very much.
Okay. So just in helping me understand how all this works moving forward, because the COC, a lot of the funding is time sensitive in that it's going to be going away.
Correct.
Which for those service providers, I'm going to go back to something in a minute, because you just caught on the Project Room Key, that was provided by our service providers, and you guys did handle that piece.
So my department, we handle the funding for Project Room Key, and we have contracts, the county has contracts with those sub-providers, the nonprofits.
Okay. So going back, where I'm kind of going with this, and just kind of understanding from the county's long-range goals or planning, because I can see some challenges for our service providers in a couple of years providing services to the transient homeless community, especially as they depend upon those COC dollars, which it looks to me like it's going to dry up, potentially, unless something changes. And kind of looking at some of the challenges that we have on the big scale with funding and the debt, national debt, other issues when it comes to debt, I think probably more likely than not, there's going to be some challenges there. So I'm just kind of curious if you're beginning to stage yourself in such a way, the county is, to perhaps beginning to take steps towards assuming greater levels of responsibility for the transient and homeless population, and or are you having those conversations as it pertains to the service providers that are currently running under the COC? And then kind of long-range goals for the county, and kind of maybe what that looks like, or kind of what you're thinking downrange. I know, again, it's kind of the crystal ball, but and then how all this works, even though I've been here for a couple of years now, I'm still sometimes a little mystified, just trying to peel back the layers of the onion, so to speak.
Sure. Well, and the COC is a whole nother beast, and I'm going to get to that later in the presentation, just high level, because my department doesn't run the COC, as you know, and can I get to that, the COC, as we move on? Crystal balling, I think, gosh, if I could, I'd be a millionaire, right? So I think that we're in an interesting time in the state with, $12 billion being pushed into this proposed, the May revise. I think there's some opportunity, but one of the things that we still are not seeing is ongoing operational funding for exactly what you're talking about. So my association, the County Welfare Directors Association, we're advocating for those funds to come in to counties, because how do you stand up, how do you buy a hotel and revamp it through Project Home Key without operational funding to continue to operate the facility, right?
As I understand, those dollars weren't even allowed to be used that way. That kind of
Right.
hit a dead end.
In Project Room Key 1.0, there wasn't operations money. My understanding, I haven't seen it yet in writing, is that Project Home Key 2.0 will have some operations funds. we'll see. It has to still be approved. I feel like we're at a time right now where we have more money coming in and more opportunity to make some significant changes and positive changes. But as far as what it's going to look like in 5 years, who knows? I think that's just kind of the nature of social services. The funding kind of goes up and down, and you do your best to keep things status quo as much as you can and find that the middle ground. But social services in general have historically always been underfunded. So you do more with less. I wish it wasn't that way, but because we won't solve homelessness ever, and we won't solve it without adequate funding.
Just, is Don Taylor, is he part of your, is he under your department? So,
He reports to me, yes. He's my
Okay.
housing administrator.
so, because he operates as the collaborative administrator for COC.
Correct.
So there is a little bit of a, and you're
So,
going to get to that, I
I'm going to
guess.
get to
Yes.
it. Yes. All right. Am I good to move on?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. So, as I alluded to, we developed the home branch, which was went to the board in 2019, and we had some very strong milestones of what we needed to achieve in that first year to get the board to approve our new branch within my department. So I hired Don Taylor, as you brought up his name. He is the housing administrator. He, I think, has been a great fit. He came from behavioral health, so he has the clinical background, but then he also has years of experience dealing with the homeless population. And then we were able to hire the rest of our team later that year, and we successfully achieved every one of those milestones. So as you can imagine, when you create a whole new branch of an agency, there's a lot to do in a pretty quick period of time. And we were able to do all of that. And then threw a wrench into everything with the pandemic. And so that home branch, that home team, small team, only about 6 employees, they are also managing the project room key and making sure that the contractors are doing what they need to do in regards to their contract deliverables. So the home branch also is responsible for having housing navigators. So we help those navigators do just what the title says. They help individuals who are homeless or experiencing at risk of homelessness to navigate the system, which is complex, and help them to find resources. And then we, of course, partner with housing developers for things like No Place Like Home, which I'm sure that Director Kennelly spoke to when he met with you last board meeting. So the COC. So I know that Mr. Smith is part of the COC, and I was actually able to listen in on the presentation yesterday as well, and I think it did a nice job of an overview of what the COC is. There's a lot of misconceptions around what the COC is and isn't, and it is required. It's a requirement for us to receive federal and state dollars into our county, and it had been for many, many years. The COC was under the umbrella of the Community Action Agency. And as things started to really shift around funding and requirements for homeless populations, we were approached, the county, by the Community Action Agency to see if we would assume that responsibility. And just they recognized that the level of infrastructure you needed in place was rather significant. And I'm here to tell you, it is significant. We are continuing to build on our homeless team because we have so many grants that require a high level of reporting and analysis and management that 1 or 2 staff just, it's too much. And to be able to meet all of those milestones and deliverables, we needed to get more people. So the COC is responsible for Butte County. Some COCs are regional, meaning that they'll have multiple counties. In our county, we are only responsible for Butte County. So all the funding that is dedicated to Butte County stays in Butte County. We are focused on ensuring that that money gets out as quickly as possible to be have grants and respond to the homeless situation. It's very finicky. Sometimes, oops, I don't know what I did there. Okay, so we operate, as I said, the regional COC. So I say we, I'm gonna be careful in my communication of my relationship with the COC. So the COC is basically a group of individuals and representatives from nonprofits, local government, county, city and town jurisdictions, and there's no bank account. They can't receive money because there's no bank account. There's no 501c3. It is literally a planning body who comes together to make decisions around the goals and priorities for that region. So when the county decided that we would accept the responsibility of being the collaborative applicant and the lead agency for the COC, that meant that we would be responsible for all the administrative duties. So basically, we're a secretary for the COC. We don't have decision-making power. There is a body that makes decisions for the COC. It's not the county. It's not my staff. It's not my department. We are just one player in the COC. And we happened right now, Don is on the executive committee. That doesn't mean that he'll always be on the executive committee. It just means for right now, he's on the executive committee. But he's one of 3 on the executive committee. Go ahead. I probably got that wrong. It's more than 3.
No, that was fine. I was just kind of curious in that the legal process as COC as a nothing. I just that stuck with me. It just stuck with me. That's always intrigued me. So at the end of the day, it's just a body of folks that have come together to make recommendation. And since we're dealing with government grant dollars, it would seem to me that at a higher level, which would probably be the Board of Supervisors, ultimately the decision-making authority then to receive those dollars, or how exactly what that process looks like. So how can a nothing be a something in that process?
So the COC makes recommendations. When I take contracts to the board that the COC says, let me back up. So say, for example, we have a grant, like the HEAP grant. So we had $7 million that came into the county. My staff put out the RFP through the COC. They wrote the grant, then it went through the COC. Applicants applied. It was rated by COC staff, or not staff, but participants. And then my staff, as the secretary, we come back, we develop the contracts, and depending on the dollar amount of that contract, we have to, because it's under the umbrella of DES, we have to adhere to the larger umbrella of the county's procurement guidelines. And so if it is over $75,000, it has to go to the board. So then the board basically stamps it as approved, but they don't have decision-making power over what the COC has already determined and awarded.
That's an interesting process.
It is an interesting process.
I don't know of any other government agency where it works like that.
That's how all
Because then who's
COCs.
ultimately, so, and most of those projects are over 75,000.
Yes.
So when those projects go awry, which there have been a few,
Yes.
or there's questions, then who is responsible then for that issue?
Correct. A great question. So that would be now, DES is responsible for monitoring and managing the grant. And so ultimately, we're responsible for ensuring that the deliverables that they agreed to, that nonprofit agreed to, that they're living up to their end of the agreement.
Okay.
If they're not, then we, as the collaborative applicant, the lead agency, we're responsible for managing that grant, and we would be the one to make a recommendation to the COC that vendor is either unfunded or they're not funded again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Councilmember Riggs wishes to ask a question.
Thank you. If you guys are responsible for managing the grant and the overseeing that process, does COC allot you guys funds in order to have staff to do such a task?
Yes. So most of these grants have a 5% admin fee cap. And so what oftentimes we'll do is we'll hold back 4% and 1% goes to whoever the contractor is. And so, but we don't get like an allocation for managing. And then there are some other smaller pots, like there's a small amount of money that comes in for the HMIS system. That's the data entry system. Not much. I mean, it's enough to pay for the licenses, the licensing fees. But we kind of piecemeal together all of the different admin fees on each of the grants. That's how we pay for staff.
Thank you. I just see the oversight and evaluation of that grant implementation being very valuable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, I'm past my 15 minutes. So I'm trying to talk fast and I'm almost done. So just going back to COC and my department's responsibility. So we're acting as the administrative entity, which means we do all the applications, we write the RFPs, and we do that grant monitoring. We also act as the collaborative applicant, which means we're the ones who write the applications for funding. And then we have the lead agency for the database, the HMIS database. And then we're also responsible for ensuring that we're meeting all of the requirements for the coordinated entry system. And so we provide that oversight and ensure that we're living up to all those expectations. But ultimately, it's we're acting as, I can't simplify it any more than we act as a secretary to the COC. Now we're at questions. I told you I was almost done. All right.
Councilmember Pittman.
Hi, thank you, Shelby.
Welcome.
I'm familiar with this. I did serve on the COC for about 3 years, but prior to the situation where the COC started reviewing grants,
Right.
we started that process. Before, the cities were the contributor through MOUs and contributed the funds to exist the COC when it was in the Housing Authority. My question today is, how much money is being used from general fund county and grant versus grants in terms to operate your office?
None. I get no county general fund for home.
And then
My department as a whole, just so you're aware, my operating budget for my department is $162 million. And I get $3 million for county general fund of my entire budget. And that $3 million covers public guardian, general assistance, veteran services.
Gotcha.
And I get no county general fund for anything I'm doing related to homeless and housing.
So the other part, the funding that you're getting, kind of just a rough percentage, how much is coming from state, how much is coming from federal?
You know, I don't have that broken down in my brain today. I can get it for you.
But would the state be the lion's share of it now?
The state is the lion's share of most of the funding that I receive in my department as a whole.
Have they improved their grant funding process, or they make it more complicated?
For the COC?
Yeah.
I think they've done a lot to streamline it and ensure that we don't have challenges that we had previously in the COC. I came in on the very tail end of all of that. And I will say, and I know that Councilman Smith is part of COC, and I would hope that he's seen a difference between when my department took over as the administrative entity and before. Not to speak disparagingly about Community Action Agency, but we just have more experience with managing grants and large dollar grants.
Right.
And a higher level of oversight.
Oh, don't get me wrong, I appreciate the process, because it was very difficult to award grants to typically when members of the COC are those grant nonprofits receiving them. So
Right.
we had quite an interesting process that had to come back to review, and some of us, it was kind of like we were learning as we go along.
I understand, and that was one of the big focus areas I had asked my staff to ensure that that didn't happen again. And we have also provided some technical assistance to some of our local nonprofits who really just didn't have the infrastructure. They hadn't had experience writing grants. They didn't know how to write a grant that would meet the federal and state requirements.
Right.
And so we have done a lot around TA.
Well, and I was there when we first approved the HMIS system, and I hope they're giving support to the nonprofits
Yes.
on HMIS, because that was a huge problem for them all. But I realized, the 3 pages necessary to fill out all that, and it was, some nonprofits were easy to adapt to it, some just, were strict, I don't want to deal with this.
Right.
And I'm glad to see that at least it's working a little better than it did then.
Yeah, I think there's always room for improvement, but we've come a long way.
Good.
And it's only been just over a year since my department has assumed these responsibilities, so.
Well, thank you for your presentation, very
Very
informative.
welcome.
Councilmember Smith.
You've helped me understand more about the COC in this, now 30 minutes almost, than I've had in almost 2 years. So I really appreciate that. I think Dawn Taylor is a wonderful addition. So I might have sounded a little bit like, I don't know, questioning some things. But I just think that it's a good evolution, especially when it comes to, significant dollars, as you alluded to, the HEAP, $7 million plus. And essentially, just I think for the public to understand, the COC is a collection of service providers, and they all have a stake in, pick me, right? And they're controlling a lot of money all of a sudden. I think that's a natural evolution going from, the one entity now over to the county. I think that's an appropriate evolution. So I just, and Don has a lot to grapple with there. But I think he's done a wonderful job. I'm not being, critical. I'm just curious, and how all that got set up, how that worked. And, it's just odd to me that a group of folks that are potentially going to receive those dollars are making decisions on how those dollars are spent. And I just, anyway, so you've helped, in my mind, clear up a lot. So I really appreciate the presentation. It's been
My
very
pleasure.
helpful.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
You're
the
very welcome.
presentation.
Thank you, Shelby.
Okay, moving on to public communication. This is the time of hearing of non-agenda items. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on non-agenda items?
Mr. Mayor, it looks like we have 3 speakers. Our first speaker is Kay Castro.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, staff. It's always a pleasure to speak and talk to you in person. I love it. I want to tell you a quick story about my grandmother. She had a tea kettle, and she'd put the tea kettle on the wood fire, and when the water boiled, then the tea kettle sang a little song, made a lot of noise. One day she put the kettle on the stove. There was no noise. She asked my grandfather, Harold, what's going on with it? There's no noise. He said, yeah, I took that ringer out of that tea kettle. I'm tired of hearing about that water boiling on the wood stove. And I thought about that story and I related, believe it or not, you're gonna laugh, I can see you behind the masks, relating that to Measure U and our fire department. And the reason is, a few weeks ago, a month ago, tons of people outside, posters and hoopla and t-shirts, and lately there hasn't been quite so much hoopla going on. But I'd like to say we are still very concerned about the Oroville Fire Department issue. We are all still very, very concerned about Measure U money and how that might be spent, not only on the fire department issue, but on other issues as well. There is a meeting next week, a Measure U meeting, 25th, and I'm really excited about that. And I'm here to really put the pressure on, not you as the council or staff, but on the citizens and the voters, the constituency, people here in Oroville. I'd like to hear from you. I know you want to hear from us. You've said it. You've responded. You've come to meetings that we've held. You've come to activities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is the cameraman.
Good evening, Oroville City Council. It's nice to be back in the chambers after quite a long break. A few meetings back, I know you clarified, Mr. Mayor, but I just want to put on the record that I did mean to say personnel. I just don't know why my brain read my note as personnel. But I did try to correct online, but I guess the mic has become more controlling. So I'm going to try to come in person because after I tried to correct myself, it said, you cannot be unmuted, only the host can unmute you. But I'm here in person, so unless you're going to put a zipper over my mouth, I can luckily still speak. Just briefly, I'm going to touch on my complaints that still have not been addressed. Now I have a question regarding those. I know you guys can't answer questions, but put it on the record out there anyways. All those were filed under the previous police chief's ruling over the department, if you will. So now all those complaints filed under his time serving Am I ever going to find out a response to those? Or did he even look into those? Did he even get time to look into some that I filed last year? I know it can take up to a full year before, by law, they have to give some response to you. And then finally, with my time remaining, I'd just like to briefly touch on how last month I was at the sentencing for a Jeremiah Robert Weed, who allegedly went on a high-speed chase through the city of Oroville and allegedly drove one of his either a maroon Dodge or a red GMC, whichever one. Your officers weren't sure, testifying at the preliminary hearing, but whatever vehicle it allegedly was, he pled no contest to avoid the prisoner's dilemma of charge stacking and potentially 13 years in prison for a crime that he admitted to me that he did not do because Oroville needed.
Mr. Mayor, the last speaker is Bobby O'Reilly.
Good evening, council. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I appreciate it. I just wanted to say that last Friday, we had a award honor ceremony for some officers that went above and beyond the call of duty and helped in the effort to save some individuals from a house fire in downtown Oroville. I want to thank the council members that attended that. I wish I would have been able to be there. However, Kay Castro filled in for me and did an amazing job. I couldn't have asked for anything better, but I just wanted to let you guys know that that happened, and we will have an upcoming awards ceremony for the two firefighters that were on scene and also saved individuals from that fire. Again, this is the citizens, the community, giving these awards, saying thank you for being there to our local hometown heroes. So thank you guys for your attendance, and I will let you know when that date is to come. Thank you guys for all of your hard work.
Okay, with that, we'll end the public communication. I'm looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
Move to adopt the consent calendar.
I second.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Okay, moving on to regular business. Item number 3, Oroville Manor Assignment and Assumption Agreement and Amendment to Loan Documents.
Good evening, Mayor Reynolds and council members. Tonight, we're asking the council to consider approving an assignment and assumption agreement and also an amendment to the loan agreement with Oroville Manor LP, which is also Oroville Manor Apartments. In Oroville Manor is a 72-unit apartment complex located at 2750 Lincoln Boulevard, and it's restricted to low and very low income seniors. In 2004, Oroville Manor was acquired by its current ownership, and the city of Oroville was a party in the financing for the project. JP Morgan Chase, Rural Development, Low Income Housing Tax Credits, and Investor. And then the two loans were redevelopment agency loan in the amount of $250,000, which bared an interest rate of 3%, excuse me, and also a home loan in the amount of $916,500 with a 1% interest rate. In March of this year, the RDA loan was paid in full, and as of May 1st, the approximate balance of the home loan is close to $161,000. The initial affordability term expired in February of 2020, and now they're asking for to create a new ownership with HPD Oroville Manor. that will basically assume the old loan at the same rate and terms, in addition to applying for tax exempt bonds to do major rehabs to the units in the home. We also were able at this point to add on an annual $5,000 monitoring fee, which is a fee that the city has been picking up for several years, not the general fund, but funds that we run through home program to monitor all of the low-income affordable housing multifamily projects that we do. We annually monitor them. There also is a 3% escalator every year that will increase as the market increases. Do you have any questions?
I do.
Does anyone from the public have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any public speakers on this item.
Councilmember Smith has a question.
Yeah, so that $45,000 per unit that's going to be spent, is that prevailing wage?
I do not know the answer to that. We have Christopher Kaufman online with Oroville Manor that possibly can answer that question.
And then how the selection of the contractor? I mean, do they first put it out for local contractors to bid on that? We may not have any voice on that, probably not, but
No.
it would certainly be nice if some of our local folks were used.
I agree.
And, $45,000 per unit, 72 units, that's a few dollars for a local economy.
I agree. Christopher, are you online?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This particular financing does not in itself have prevailing wage, but we also have a related construction company that tries to take advantage of the on-site trades to the extent possible. I mean, that obviously makes our job a lot easier. It's what we did it's the same team that did the work when the first rehab was done back in 2004 and 2005. So at the moment, I know that the construction company is starting to, price out and figure out what trades we need. I don't work on that particular part of it, but I can, provide some follow-up information on that to the extent that they, have identified any local trades. But that is our custom to try to take advantage of, local labor.
I have a follow-up question. So I don't know what the square footage is on each unit, but it would seem to me like that's a complete remodel. I mean, that's tearing out every cabinet. I mean, that's stripping it down, I would assume. If it's not prevailing wage, then it would seem to me like you could certainly completely rehab 100% each one of these units. Is that kind of the plan?
Yes, at this scope of work, we are able to do. We try to hit most of the major systems that we can, things that need, to go on for the longest life possible. Some things are easier to do, through turns, but generally speaking, at this amount of money, we will be rehabbing kitchens. We will be, completely redoing bathrooms. We try to, add in energy efficient, whether it's hot water systems, solar to the extent that we can. So this is not the scope that we were able to accomplish the last time, which, was a modest rehab, making the most of the money that we had. We have a significantly more resources this time around to do a much more comprehensive renovation.
Of course, at $66 a sheet for OSB versus about $7 when you did it. Maybe not.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Fair point.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate that facility is on the side of being aged, and I'm glad to see you doing some work with it. Certainly, it's been heavily used, and I'm guessing it's going to be carpet, fixtures, all the items that are wearables. There is one pull chain system up there that the residents can use to notify the manager if they need any help. I wondered if they're going to upgrade that system to something maybe a little more electronically efficient than the pull chain notification.
I don't have the specific answer for this property. The last two projects that we did, one was in Yuba City. Those were also senior projects, and that's exactly what we had there. There were old pull chain systems that were
upgraded into a more electronic system. So we're familiar with that. I'm sure that's being looked at, but I don't have the answer one way or the other of which way the construction team is concluding on that.
Thank you for your answer. I appreciate seeing that improvement because the pull chain was, I think it was mounted in the bathroom and the person would have to get in the bathroom to actually pull it. So I'm sure we can get some other kind of electric device. I'm glad to hear you taking attention to that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Goodson.
Thank you. This is just an aside, but it's my understanding because I know several people that live in that complex. Originally, it was designed as a senior citizens complex, but in the past few years, it has been changed into, there's multiple families, younger people. So, yes, it has become broad. It did. So I understand your question in regards to the pull chain, but I don't think that's relevant anymore.
I have a friend who just moved in there about a year and a half ago, and the criteria was they had to be 55 years old. And so if that's happening, that's something to look into.
Yeah, that's what I was trying,
Advantage.
it's supposed to be a senior home, so if it's not, that's not happening, then we can definitely talk to the property managers and the owners.
And perhaps it's tenants that are older that just choose to have their family members move in.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, there are generally speaking, these types of properties that because of the types of tax credits and other financing that we have in there, they are supposed to be limited to specific ages, but there are exceptions. There are certain exceptions for some sort of caregiving personnel, and then also the exception that allows, or essentially you're discriminating by age, right? You're allowing it only to be older. That same exception allows for certain accessibility needing tenants. So regardless of age, if somebody was handicapped in terms of needing a wheelchair, the types of facilities that you would find at a senior project are going to many times be more accommodating. And so they may be able to get in even though they don't meet the age threshold. So I don't know. I will check with my management because I am one of the current owners of it. And we've got federal and state requirements that we have to abide to with respect to age. And I'm hearing what you're saying, and I certainly want to look into it because if people are being permitted to move in that aren't allowed to, that's a big problem for me.
Thank you, but I do understand your qualifying statement in regards to caregivers and then extenuating, situations, disabilities. Thank you.
Chief, we're going to draft a warrant for that, please. Okay, well, if we have no more discussion on that, I'm looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 8948.
So moved.
Second.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Moving on to item number 4, accept the agreement between Butte County Association of Governments and Regional Early Action Plan, REAP, sub-allocation grant funds and appoint a part-time assistant planner.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Back in July of 2020, the Housing and Community Development Department, or HCD, released funding for the REAP grant program. And the REAP grant program is the Regional Early Action Plan. This plan allows for regional entities to collaborate on projects that have a broader regional impact on housing. BCAG put out a request to the JPA members to request projects related to housing planning and to facilitate the streamlining and accelerate of the housing production. City staff submitted a request for a part-time associate planner in the amount of $46,000 for a duration of 1 year. This planner will assist with planning activities such as processing applications, conditional use permits, variances, subdivisions, and design review. The current student intern has interned with the City of Oroville since September of 2019 and has performed at the level of an assistant planner. He's done exceptional work. Today, staff is requesting for the council to accept the 2019-2020 Regional Early Action Plan sub-allocation from BCAG in the amount of $46,000 and appoint our student intern as the part-time assistant planner through the end of the program funding period. Any questions?
Do we have any questions from the public?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any public speakers on this item.
Councilmember Riggs?
Thank you. My question is, was there a strategic reason why we were planning for part-time instead of full-time?
Part-time because this student intern is a full-time student at UC Irvine, and so we didn't want to take up too much time. Part-time because then we also avoid benefits, the full package or burden of benefits, but also because we wanted to continue on with his internship, but in the capacity that he's functioning at as an assistant planner.
Do you think that the department is meeting its capacity at that, its total capacity?
We are also going to fly the position of associate planner because we've also received the Cal OES grant funding for the code enforcement that will provide funding for an associate planner for 2.5 years. So that position will be released and flown.
Great,
soon.
thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? So we are looking for a recommendation to accept the 2019-2020 Regional Early Action Plan grant sub-allocation in the amount of $46,000 and approve the appointment of the student intern as a part-time assistant planner as indicated in the fiscal impact of this staff report dated May 18th, 2021.
I so move.
Second.
Dawn, where'd you go? Come here, please.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
I don't know if everybody knows, but today is Dawn's birthday. And she is an amazing part of this team, and we just really appreciate you, Dawn. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday,
Hey, dear Dawn.
happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
But just to share the embarrassment, yesterday was Liz's birthday.
Oh, wow.
And
Where's
so
she at?
she's already slipped out on us.
Oh.
But yesterday was her birthday, and I just wanted to recognize Liz as well, the great work she does for us, and wish her a happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Liz.
And tomorrow we have a special day for somebody. Councilperson Riggs' birthday is tomorrow, so we have them stacked up, back to back.
Holy
So
cow.
happy
birthday.
to you.
It's not my birthday yet.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Chrissy.
Chrissy with an I.
Happy birthday.
And I think that's the most nervous I've been during a council meeting so far.
Oh, my goodness. Well, there's a good team here, and I really appreciate being part of it.
There it is.
All right, moving on to reports, discussions, correspondence, council announcements, and reports. Does anyone from the council have anything to announce? Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you. Over the past few months, I've been reporting that downtown Oroville has been doing a needs assessment for the district to determine what businesses our community would like to see within the downtown district and what improvements the community would like to see within the district. So that report has been completed, and I printed copies of that for our council and for staff. And I just want to encourage you to read that and get a better understanding of one of the things that's really important in it is In 2010, we had a $291 million sales leakage to neighboring towns. Dawn and I are working together to find the updated numbers for that, but we're losing a considerable amount of money in our community to neighboring towns just because we don't have the offerings. So this report really prioritizes what industries and services our community members would like to see and can be used as a guide in future planning for our downtown district. I'll pass those out to you guys now.
Thank you. I can speak a little bit to that. Men's clothing, I can't find a shirt here, you know, and we really used to have some nice stores, Ryan's, Aston's, City of Paris, JCPenney's, all of them. And now we don't, so.
I will say that females were the primary respondents, and so men's clothing didn't make it on the list.
I don't wear any of that.
So yeah, men's clothing and men's desires are underrepresented. I think a lot of that's due to females being more active in survey taking and engagement on community development levels and in recreational shopping. So although men's clothing is ranked lower, I do believe it is absolutely a need. So you're right on that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, just quickly, I think I'd already mentioned the COC meeting yesterday with a real focus on some of the challenges Chico has. So that was rather fascinating, and a deeper dive into the history of COC, which I think we've all been apprised of today, which was kudos to Shelby for that presentation. One other piece, the Chamber of Commerce has about 20,000 masks. I know we're almost past this, June 15th, can't come soon enough when it comes to, I think, dispensing of the mask, or at least some sort of new hybrid model of us being able to do that. But just for all the local businesses, that we do still have masks available, hand sanitizer at the Chamber of Commerce. If you need that, it's at no cost to you. Any business in town or in our area is certainly welcome to make use of that.
Eric, masks are also nice for the upcoming fire season.
Well, you know, I was kind of thinking we could repurpose the whole intent, right? Yeah, but hopefully not.
Thank you. Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Got a chance to visit with the Red Bluff Fire Chief last week and talking about their reserve program, and they shared a lot of information. I certainly have to extend the invitation from him to any council member or community member that would like to talk about the program. He welcomed anyone to call him on the phone, email him. I'll send the contact information all to the council members. But very proud of that program up there, and they've had a lot of success with that. The other item I should mention too, the Rotary fireworks fundraiser is in process right now, and we're planning on the fireworks to happen on July 4th at the Oroville Airport, and earlier in the day will be the Oroville fly-in, so kind of a little added benefit to that activity. So things are moving.
Councilmember Goodson.
Yes, I'd just like to thank the City Public Works Department under Wade Atterbury and Ron Belser, who left prematurely. And they have partnered with Butte County Probation Community Service Project in regards to the clearing and the weed abatement of many of the alleyways in South Oroville. So I just wanted to give a shout out. They spent a day and a half, and they did a tremendous job. The community is very thankful and very appreciative for that project that was specifically orchestrated by Mr. Ron Belser, Oroville Police officer, and code enforcement overseer.
Okay, if there are no more comments or announcements from the council, looking for future agenda items. Having none, administration reports. Mr. Legron.
Mr. Mayor, I did attend the recognition ceremony for the officers the other day. It was very nice. It was nice of the community to put that on, and I really appreciate the work that the officers do. We have received our engine or our new ARF back from putting the new bed on it. I would recommend everybody stop by and look at that. It is a very nice looking piece of equipment that we have now. It's impressive. It looks good. Our firefighters look good. It's gonna, it's a slick piece of machinery. So please stop by and see that if you can. The last thing that I would like to mention to the council is I would like to get some potential dates or set a date for you. Mr. Wentz has agreed to tour the council through the new high-rise hospital wing that's being added. I think that would be really interesting for you to see that and also see what does it look like from being up on top. I realize it doesn't look that big from the road, but when you're standing next to it, it's a pretty impressive structure. But I'd like to provide that opportunity for you. If you like, I could send out some dates and see if that works for everyone, because I would like to tour you all at the same time. Reason being is I don't want to disrupt the workplace, and their safety protocols and procedures may not allow for anything to be going on or above where the tour is going on at. So I don't want to shut down the job site for too long. But I will send you some dates either this week or the first part of next week when we may be able to get that done.
Bill, are you looking at an evening hour appointment?
I could ask Mr. Winstead what would work best. I mean, if it would be, whatever. I want to work around as best I can their schedule, because I just don't want to shut down the work. But I believe evening would probably be best for them, somewhere around 5:30, something like that. We don't want to go after dark, of course, but
Right.
We also, it's not getting dark till 7:30 or something like that. So, but anyway, I believe an evening would probably be best for them, but I will check with Mr. Wins to make for sure.
Thank you.
Dawn with a W.
Just wanted to report that our goats have returned. So they are in and around the 15 locations throughout the city, so keep an eye out for them. They're already another Facebook hit, so. And also just adding to the alleyways progress, the code enforcement staff and the public works staff did a fantastic job today, so I wanted to commend them.
Are those Billy's goats? Mr. Lando?
Well, Dawn skipped one. She's also working on municipal services review. We actually have quite a bit of interest in annexation development. We may have a hurdle at LAFCO once the annexation has occurred, but that'll come. That'll be the next step.
Thank you. Ruth?
Just a quick update, working very hard on the budget. We're going to be giving the council a peek at the preliminary budget on the first meeting of June, and then we're going to schedule a workshop a couple of weeks after that, and we'll be going over it in detail and making any changes, and then the first meeting in July we'll be adopting the budget if the council is ready to. So, working hard on the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Tans?
We nailed down a date for the burn at the airport, so I just wanted to let you guys know. It's either going to be the 31st, Memorial Day, or Tuesday, and we're looking at 170 to 200 acres to burn out there. And as I said before, it's great training for us in preparation for other things too. But I'll get a notice out to you guys just in case, because weather always permits. If it's windy or red flag event, we may have to shift it a day. But I'll make sure to keep everyone in the loop and to get the media involved to get the info out.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Hubert? Nothing? Okay, with that, we shall adjourn the meeting until June 1st, 2021 at 4 p.m.